Today's video started with an offhand comment from someone that was new coming into the game that said they thought all of the starter cards were bad. And I couldn't disagree with that more. I think while some of the cards you start with, such as Misty Knight and Shocker, lack key pieces that you get later on, such as Patriot, to remain competitive, a lot of cards in Marvel Snap in general tend to see synergy or reasonable play in certain shells. And it got me to thinking, what are the worst cards in Marvel Snap? And as I racked my brain and scrolled through the list, I've come up with what I think are the 5 worst cards in the game right now that hopefully get some love in the future. Let's dive on into it and talk about why I think these cards are just not quite up to snuff. To start with, we have Adam Warlock. This is a card that has a very high variance effect. Drawing extra cards in Marvel Snap is really powerful because your deck is so small and you see so much of it every game anyways, that if you see even 1 or 2 more cards, you see almost the entirety of your deck over the course of the game. But that being said, there's a lot of games where Adam just effectively doesn't do anything, and even if you're set up to do something with him, if your opponent plays kind of sporadically to a location you weren't predicting them to, Adam ends up doing actual nothing. I'm not sure you could really change the metrics on this card to make it reasonable. I think even giving Adam a single point of power probably makes it too strong, and I think this is a card that I'd kind of like to see a redesign for rather than just adjusting the numbers. But I'd love to know your thoughts on that in the comments down below. The second of the 5 worst cards in Marvel Snap is another card that has to do with drawing cards. That's Crystal. So Crystal is 4 energy for 4 power, which is a pretty mediocre rate/ratio. This is on reveal. This is played to the middle location. Shuffle your hand into your deck and draw 3 cards. While this type of effect could be very potent, by the time you're doing this on the 4th turn, the game is already 2/3 over. Anything you were hoping to have her help you find to set up has mostly come and gone at that point. I think this is a card that could potentially be okay to just see numbers adjust on, perhaps as a 3 energy 2 power or 3 energy 3 power thing. This card could see some play because then she could add consistency to archetypes like Mr. Negative. But like I said, that's also kind of dangerous, adding more consistency to decks in a game where decks are already hyper consistent. There's some concerns with things being too samey, but as is, Crystal basically doesn't see any play in any of the reasonable decks, and she could almost assuredly use some kind of adjustment. The third card in our list here is Hazmat. This is a card that seems like a really sweet build around, giving all other cards -1 power, but it's just difficult for this card to be good consistently because it being good really depends on the fact that your opponent needs to have more cards than you in play. Now, perhaps we get more cards like Debris or Viper or Green Goblin or Hobgoblin over the course of time, and this card comes into its own that way by helping you ensure that your opponent always has more cards in play for you. But right now, even when you dedicate your entire deck to Hazmat, it feels like it's just too low and inconsistent of a payoff for the cost, especially when you're running into things like the Destroyer deck that put very few total cards into play. The fourth card up here on the worst Marvel Snap cards right now is Nick Fury. Unfortunately, this card's rate and ratio just are not particularly good enough. Only getting 7 power out of your 5-drop is not nearly enough board presence, and getting a bunch of random 6 costs into your hand tends to not be particularly good. Not only do you not get turns to plan out which of those 6-drops could be best, but a lot of the 6-drops in Marvel Snap are kind of synergy or big payoff cards for specific archetypes, meaning that it can be kind of difficult to get one that's just generically good with whatever else you have going on. I think this deck's most potential archetype for Nick Fury could be something with Devil Dino or Collector, but Nick just kind of gets outclassed by other options that do similar thing at more efficient energy rates. Both Moon Girl and White Queen, I think, do things similar to what Nick is doing, but in a way that gives you valuable information. In the case of White Queen, or in the case of Moon Girl, is duplicating cards that you know you want because you put them in your deck, as opposed to giving you random cards that are probably going to be bad. Now, I will say what I think is probably the worst card, and honestly, one of the biggest flavor misses in Marvel Snap right now, is a starter card, and that's Cyclops. You know, leader of the X-Men, shoots a laser out of his eye, has a really fantastic hover animation, no abilities. Now, the thing that sets Cyclops apart from the other no ability cards in Marvel Snap is his energy cost. So other cards like Misty Knight and Shocker and Abomination and Hulk, they fit on the curve at different points, and they provide a better energy to stat ratio than Cyclops does in a way that works with Patriot. Patriot's a card that gives all of your cards with no abilities +2 attack, but Patriot costs 3. Patriot usually wants to be played with Mystique, who also costs 3, which means that Cyclops just falls at a spot on your curve without providing enough power that it really just doesn't fit in with the cards that make the other no ability cards work. This is another card that's similar to Adam Warlock. I kind of would like to just see a rework for it. I think any 3-cost no ability card, unless you give it a silly amount of stats like 6 or 7, is going to be reasonable inside of the Patriot deck anyways. And I think this character just deserves some kind of abilities based on just what it does in the Vorthos of the Marvel Universe. What do you think of my list? Is there a card that you think is worse than these 5 cards that I listed? Let me know in the comments down below why you think that is. If you're new to the channel, make sure you're subscribed if you enjoy this type of stuff. In addition to tidbits like this, I also do deck highlights and cover game news updates here every single day of the week. I'd love to see you back again. Thanks for watching as always, folks. Enjoy the rest of your day.